Today's case is truly horrifying, and even more so if you're a parent. It does deal with domestic abuse and family violence, so if that's a trigger for you, please do not watch this video, or at least don't watch all of it. This case really shows the sinister nature of coercive control and the destruction it can cause. This is a story of intimidation and stalking, of threats and retaliation, played out slowly over months and years. If you're new here, my name is Zara, and on this channel we talk about true crime. So if that's of any interest to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on new videos, and hit the like button, guys. It really helps me out. Let's jump in. Hannah Clarke was born on 8th September 1988 to her parents Sue and Lloyd Clarke in Queensland, Australia. She had a younger brother named Nathaniel, and they grew up in a loving and supportive family. Hannah was known for her vibrant personality and strong sense of determination. Growing up, Hannah excelled in her studies and sports and had a passion for fitness and outdoor activities. She was a school captain in her final year and represented the state for trampolining. She even worked as a coach for trampoline classes. She was a fun, happy, bubbly, friendly girl and an extremely hardworking person, and her kind nature led her to pursue a career in childcare, where she thrived in creating positive environments for children. After school, she began working at the PCYC in Carindale, teaching kindy gym, which is a gymnastics class for toddlers and preschoolers. It was during this time in 2008, at the age of 19-20, she met a man named Rowan Baxter. They quickly entered into a relationship, and 6 months later, Hannah found herself pregnant. And she was happy and she wanted to have the baby, but Rowan, who was 31 at the time, he told her that she was way too young, so Hannah ended up having an abortion. Hannah and Rowan moved in together into a townhouse in Mansfield, Brisbane, and she began working full-time at the Athlete's Foot inside a town shopping center. And Rowan initially joined Hannah at the PCYC as a boxing instructor, but then he began working as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. They looked like the picture-perfect couple despite their 11-year age gap. They were both fit, they were attractive, and happily in love. But before we move on, let's quickly talk about Rowan. Rowan Baxter was born on May 9th, 1977, in the Taronga region on New Zealand's North Island, and he was known to have played sports in his youth, particularly rugby, and he was often described as having a charismatic personality. He was good-looking, confident, and known for his athleticism and competitive nature. He was extremely fit and healthy, and he rarely drank alcohol and didn't take any drugs. However, as he transitioned into adulthood, his relationships, particularly with women, became increasingly troubled. In court documents, it stated that this could stem from his childhood, as his own father was imprisoned for sexually assaulting his sisters. In 2005, Rowan became a member of the New Zealand Warriors NRL squad, and he was contracted to the Warriors on a $10,000 per month playing fee, but never played a game in the top grade. Rowan's behavior exhibited controlling and volatile traits, which later became significant in his relationships with women. His cousin would later claim the way he spoke to his own mother was very disrespectful, that he got into porn at an early age and his mom kind of just accepted it. And she said he had an obsession with sex and treated women with hate from a very young age. This background set the stage for the deeply troubling events that unfolded later in his life. At the time he met Hannah, Rowan was 31 years old and in a long-term relationship already. And it's unclear if he was married to this woman. Court documents refer to her as his first wife, but other articles claim they never married, so I'm not really sure about it, but let's just call her his first wife for the sake of the story. So he met his first wife when he was just 18 years old, and she was just 16 in New Zealand. A few years later, they had a son named Isaiah, and when Isaiah was just 2 years old, his wife wanted to leave Rowan. Although he was only 18 when they began dating, Rowan quickly began showing signs of his controlling behavior and quick temper. Rowan refused his wife's wishes of ending this relationship. He would show up unexpectedly, randomly, uninvited, leave notes on her car trying to get her back, telling her that he wanted his family back. He once told her that he could end it all for all three of them using a hose pipe he kept in the trunk of his car. Obviously terrified, his first wife felt she had no choice but to continue on in the relationship. In 2007, the family moved from New Zealand to Brisbane, Australia, and just a year later, Rowan met Hannah at the PCYC. So despite being in a relationship with his wife, Rowan entered into a relationship with Hannah while living with his wife and son, the wife and son that he begged to get back just, a year prior. His wife knew he was having an affair, and this made her extremely unhappy, and I'm not sure if it was due to her having feelings for him, or perhaps it was the feeling of, helplessness that she may have felt. She knew his bad side. She couldn't leave him on her terms, but he could do whatever he wanted. During this time, Rowan told Hannah that he was separated with his wife, but living together for the sake of their son, Isaiah. However, Rowan told a friend at the time that the only reason he was living with his wife is because he could not afford to move out. He didn't have much money. So he was moving on with Hannah, right? So finally, he agreed to a separation with his first wife, and they would agree on a custody arrangement for their son, Isaiah. Despite the agreement, if Rowan had an issue with the parenting plan, he would become extremely aggressive with his now ex-wife, and one time he threatened to smash her door down to gain access to their son. Rowan's relationships with women prior to Hannah always ended due to jealousy, manipulation, and emotional abuse. In October of 2012, after dating and living together for around 4 years, Hannah and Rowan would get married. Hannah was 14 weeks pregnant with their child, and so her parents ended up paying for the entire wedding. And Rowan, being in his mid-30s by now, you would think he would be grateful to her parents, but according to court documents, he was angry that they did not receive more money in the form of wedding gifts, as he wanted to use that money to fund their honeymoon overseas. So that's kind of giving you a glimpse into what Rowan was like. On April 10th, 2013, their daughter Aaliyah was born, and after this day, Rowan refused to pay for any child support in relation to his first child, Isaiah. And I'm not sure if Hannah was aware about any of this, how he was treating his first wife, but, guys can lie and be like, you never know my crazy ex, she did this and that. And every time a guy says that his ex was crazy, I'm like, what did you do to make her crazy? You know what I mean? Everyone has their own sort of part in it, but, you can't just accuse your ex-wife and the mother of your child of being crazy all the time. So you always got to look at both sides. And I'm not sure if Hannah did. So during this time, Hannah and Rowan decided to enter into business together, and they opened up their own gym. They asked Hannah's parents, Sue and Lloyd, to invest in it. So they were given $18,000 from them, and another person who's unnamed invested $40,000. The gym, however, did not do well. Rowan, was not born to be a businessman. He could not manage money well, and he could not predict the incoming and outgoing gym memberships. He also would treat his own customers badly, paying customers. He was very blunt and would berate customers if they did not perform well, often calling them fat and lazy and that they were not working hard enough. This would often drive their customers, potential members, away. And the couple was constantly behind in rent and other bills. And this is wild, but they would leave their unopened bills in Sue and Lloyd's mailbox. Sue and Lloyd would then attend to these bills and make sure they were paid. This is wild. Hannah was in her late 20s, but Rowan's in his mid 30s. This is wild to be babied like that, to be saved you know? Sue and Lloyd at first believed Rowan was a lovely guy. They state that the first couple years of their relationship were great, but when they began having kids, things started to reveal themselves. Due to Sue and Lloyd always having to bail out the couple financially, Rowan began to resent them. You know, instead of being grateful, he felt that Sue and Lloyd now owned him. He then began to treat his own mother-in-law horribly. And this is not really surprising given statements of how he treated his own mother. In January 2015, Hannah and Rowan opened a new gym called Integrate at Mansfield, and they went on to have 2 more children, Leanna, born on March 19th, 2015, and Trey, born on December 4th, 2016. Their gym was a regular gym, but it also conducted CrossFit classes. So on the gym's website, Rowan, he described himself as a recognized sportsman and one of the top fitness coaches in Brisbane. He claims he had worked with the NRL, AFL, and Super Rugby clubs, introducing them to functional body weight training. His social media accounts were photos of him with many known sports stars. Anytime Sue would attend the gym, he would tell her she didn't need to be there. During one training session when he was training Sue, he dropped her, causing her to fall and split the side of her face open. And instead of helping his mother-in-law, he laughed at her. And he did this openly, causing other members that were present at the gym to be in shock at his behavior. Whenever Hannah misbehaved, according to Rowan, he would then punish Sue by not allowing her to look after the children. If Sue stood up to Rowan and said something, Hannah would later call her crying, begging her to apologize to Rowan and fix it. After Hannah went back to work full-time, Rowan would plan days off from his own job to interfere with Sue's contact with the children so she wouldn't be able to watch them. Despite owning 2 cars, Rowan borrowed Hannah's brother's car and drove it for months. And this was because he was always late on paying bills, his car registration bills, and he racked up over 30,000 kilometers on his brother-in-law's car and $200 in toll bills. Whenever his brother-in-law tried to drive it, there was never any fuel in the car. And when Hannah's brother finally said, you know what, I need the car back, and he couldn't lend it to Rowan anymore, Rowan stopped talking to him and made it difficult for Hannah to stay in contact with him too. Sue states that being around Rowan was like walking on eggshells. Let's talk about what coercive control is and what Hannah experienced in her relationship with Rowan. Coercive control is when someone uses abusive behavior against another person. It can involve physical, verbal, emotional, financial, and even mental abuse. Over time, the victim feels trapped and afraid, and it can diminish their self-esteem and confidence and takes away their freedom and independence. And this then makes it difficult for them to leave the relationship or get help. So I've gathered a bunch of examples of behavior that Rowan would exhibit in the relationship, which I think is important to kind of give you an idea of what Hannah went through. So Rowan was very controlling about what Hannah wore. She was not allowed to wear shorts, short skirts, or even the color pink because that's what little girls wore. They shared a joint Facebook page as Rowan did not allow Hannah to have her own one. Rowan would openly criticize Hannah in front of her family and friends, especially during family gatherings. He would isolate Hannah from her friends and family by not allowing her to attend their weekly family barbecues and blocking her from attending celebrations like the annual Good Friday family event. On Mother's Day, he only allowed Hannah to spend half the day with Sue, insisting that they spend the rest of the day honoring and celebrating his mother, who had at that time passed away. One time when Hannah was pregnant with Leanna, Sue saw that Hannah had this big bruise on her leg, which she later would find out that Rowan had slammed the back gate on her as he was frustrated. After Trey was born, Rowan decided to work just 3 days a week, and he rested on the other days, while Hannah took many classes at the gym they owned, looked after the children, and also began taking a marketing course. So he had to rest, but Hannah had to do everything, I guess, and bring in the money too. But when Hannah would get home from doing all that, he would openly criticize her, shout at her, tell her that the house was a pigsty, and asked her what she did all day. I mean, guys, wow. He then told her that they needed more money and demanded that she get a second job. So that's when she, I believe, went back to working at the Athlete's Foot on Mondays and Fridays. And then she worked at the gym the rest of the days. And look after the house and look after the children, get the groceries, cook dinner, do everything. She did it all. If Hannah refused to have sex, he would go days without talking to her. So one instance of this is in 2019 when Hannah did refuse to have sex with Rowan. They ended up having a huge fight and Rowan left the house taking a hose with him. Hannah, freaked out thinking he was going to hurt himself. So she drove around in her car for hours looking for him. When he finally came home, he told her that he had tried to kill himself. This is another sign of coercive control, making Hannah scared of his behavior, punishing her, making her dependent on him. However, his punishments didn't only land on Hannah. The poor children were also on the receiving end of his ways. He viewed them as his possessions and was intentionally rough with them. When he was mad at Hannah, he would then punish the children by not allowing them to do the things that they had planned. When they didn't put their toys away quickly enough, he would throw them in the bin. And one time he was playing with his oldest daughter, Aaliyah, and was so rough with her that he knocked her head into a door frame and he split her head open.
You want to get the wing chow? I want the wing chow. Wing chow, see?
Rowan was an athlete, and would always take ice baths. And he would then also force his young kids into a post-workout ice bath. Rowan would film these events and post them on, their joint Facebook page, bragging that, look, even my kids take ice baths. Trey, the youngest little baby boy, would scream with fear every time this would happen. By the way, if you don't know, kids don't regulate their body temperature as well as adults do, so this would have been torture for the kids. The kids were also quite scared of their dad. However, Aaliyah, being the eldest, would stand up for her mom. If Rowan stormed out of the house after a fight, Aaliyah would slam the door behind him, telling him not to come back. If Rowan and Hannah were in a fight, Aaliyah would intervene, telling Rowan to just go talk to her mom. And it's kind of sad because it's said, I don't know who said it, but it's believed that he disliked Aaliyah because of her bold nature and the way she would stand up to him. Hannah also believed that Rowan had been tracking her car and was recording her phone calls, and she believed he had a listening device in the home as well as in the car. He would look through Hannah's phone at night when she slept, and once when she actually caught him doing this, he threw her phone across the room, shattering the screen. Rowan would follow up on her whereabouts when she was at the gym via the gym cameras. One time when she was in the car with her friend, her car's Bluetooth connected to a third phone in the car, and Hannah was like, hold on, because it should have only been Hannah's phone or the friend's phone. Hannah immediately then realized Rowan had left another phone in the car to record her conversations. So he must have left the Bluetooth on and that's why it connected. So that was his mistake. But if that didn't happen, Hannah would have not known that he could just grab that phone, check the recordings, and he could just hear everything she was talking about in private. Despite the struggles Hannah faced in her relationship, she was a devoted mother to her 3 children, and her main focus was their safety and well-being. By late 2019, Aaliyah was 6 years old and in grade 2. She was a sweet, smart, well-behaved little girl who was excelling at school. She loved reading and English class. Leanna was 4 years old and had started preschool. Leanna was gentle and liked to make sure people around her were okay. When Rowan was in a bad mood, Leanna would often climb onto his lap and try to calm him down. Trey was 3 years old and Hannah's little baby. He loved running and jumping and playing. He loved to be with his mother. All 3 children were healthy and happy and full of life. They loved going to the beach and going to the gym with Hannah. Hannah would often bring them to the gym with her so they could watch her do her workouts and try to copy her. And the kids really loved their mom. I mean, you can just see the love radiating from the photos of Hannah with her kids. It's not hard to see. At this point, the relationship between Rowan and Hannah just kept deteriorating. On her 30th birthday, Rowan organized this surprise party for Hannah at their gym. And when Hannah's friend told Rowan that Hannah didn't want a party, but all she wanted was a necklace with her kids' names on it, he got really pissed and angry, and he didn't talk to Hannah for days and then told her she couldn't celebrate her own birthday. Finally, he ended up getting, that necklace for her, but he didn't pay for it. He gathered money from gym members and Hannah's family to pay for this necklace, and they were the ones that celebrated her birthday. I mean, I've heard of people doing this. Like, I remember having a friend, right? And I gotta not give away too much, but I remember having a friend and it was her birthday. I think it was like her 25th birthday or something like that. And she had told me she wanted a particular, if I say it, I'm going to give it away. She wanted something for her birthday, right? Like, she wanted something. And yeah, it was expensive, but it wasn't anything wild. She had a full-time job. Her boyfriend had a full-time job. I believe they were engaged at this point. And he literally asked everyone for money to chip in for this birthday gift. And I was like, I don't know. Like, it was like $150. And I was like, did 10 people really need to chip in for this? Like, you could have gotten her this and then we could have all chipped into something. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, maybe it was different back then. But I remember thinking back then, like, damn, you couldn't just get her the friggin' gift. It's kind of wild. Anyway, my point is, I don't know how guys do this. And Rowan is like a grown-ass man. How expensive was the necklace? It's kind of weird. His controlling behavior only began to escalate after this in November 2019. Hannah had trained at the time to compete in a big CrossFit competition in a team, and she won a place on the team. However, Rowan failed to get a solo spot, so he joined Hannah in her team along with a couple of other friends. I hope that makes sense. But he had to pull out from the team due to an injury. And after this, he expected Hannah to pull out too. He didn't like that Hannah was a better athlete than him, that she outshined him. After this happened, I guess they were at the gym or something like that. On the way home, Hannah began talking to her friend about Rowan taking over these CrossFit sessions and how he was being too full on. And Rowan apparently overheard this conversation due to their daughter, Aaliyah, accidentally calling him on Hannah's phone. He became enraged and did not speak to Hannah once again. Also, over the time I was researching this case, there were many instances where Rowan didn't speak to Hannah, and it's a very passive-aggressive way of fighting in a relationship, and it's one of the most annoying things to do, I reckon, because just shut up and just tell me how you feel. It's so annoying to just not talk, and I think it's a very bitchy thing to do, and this grown-ass man, but it's also a way that, from what I read, it makes the victim in a coercive, controlling relationship feel so helpless that now you're begging the person to talk to you and you're just trying to get communication. So it's perhaps a manipulative way of getting the victim to chase you. And there were many instances of this accidental recording happening, and Rowan would even tell his friends that the kids somehow recorded Hannah's conversations while in the car and sent it to him. And even his friends found this unbelievable. How is a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old gonna go to the recording app, record the conversation perfectly, end the recording, then somehow share it with their father? Like, it's so unbelievable. And it was clear to Hannah that he was recording her constantly. He had recording devices in the car and in the home, and he would know of every conversation Hannah had with anyone while he wasn't there. He should have bought, a lotto ticket if he was that lucky that all these accidental recordings kept getting sent to him. He then began accusing Hannah of having an affair with another man and would block the children from doing things with Hannah, things that Hannah wished to do with them, arguing with her at every moment. It was all becoming too much. And Hannah finally decided to leave him. She began preparing to leave Rowan. She told her mother that she wanted to live with her and the kids, and Sue also began preparing for them to stay with her and Lloyd. On December 5th, 2019, Hannah's best friend spoke to Sue and told her that Hannah had moved out. Hannah only took a few things from her house and pulled Aaliyah out of school. She left her phone in the car and then hid the car in a different street in case Rowan had a tracking device in it. The next day, December 6th, Hannah moved into her parents' home. During this period, Rowan called her multiple times, accusing her of hurting the children. She got a new phone and changed her number. That day, Hannah then went to the Carina police station and was informed that she could now obtain a domestic violence order, but she was scared to do this in case it aggravated Rowan even more. During this time, as she was separating with him, Hannah let Rowan visit with the kids, and the kids even slept over with Rowan a few times. And this was because he insisted and cried and asked for help during these times. Although Hannah and the Clarkes were terrified he would do something to the kids, he usually returned them the next morning. Around this time, Hannah also decided to leave the gym. She wanted to separate herself from Rowan in every way, and they announced just before Christmas that the gym was closing down. When it closed down in December 2019, the investors were still owed about $75,000. On Christmas Day 2019, he was allowed to visit with the kids, and he gave them all gift cards for their presents. Just like little cards with money loaded on it, and they can buy whatever they want. However, when the Clarkes took them to buy toys with these gift cards, they found out they were empty. He just gave them empty gift cards. This is the type of guy he was. On December 26th, he spent time with the kids and then wanted them to come home with him. When Hannah refused, he threw Leanna in the front seat of his car with no car seat, no seatbelt, and he sped off. As he was driving, he said, "You have caused all of this. It's your fault." As you can imagine, Hannah was frantic, and luckily this entire incident was recorded by the police as a witness who saw what Rowan did, flagged down a police car and reported the incident. And the police approached Hannah, who was pretty distraught, and she told them about what happened and that Rowan would not return Leanna. Leanna was bawling, and the other two kids were also really upset. And because there were no family orders in place, they couldn't bring Leanna back. They couldn't force Rowan to return Leanna as he was her father. They were technically married, and, even though they were going through a separation, couldn't do anything about it. Then on December 28th, 2019, a constable at the police station advised Hannah she was going to apply for a DVO against Rowan regardless of Hannah's wishes, but Hannah actually agreed, and the conditions were that Rowan could not be within 100 meters of the kids or Hannah until it was taken to court.
And he took the middle one and just took off with her in my car. And now he's trying to play games with me on the phone.
Here, a distressed Hannah flags down police moments after her estranged husband abducted their 4-year-old daughter Leanna in the weeks before he killed the family.
I know it's frustrating. I know it's his.
I don't object to him actually seeing the kids.
What's his name?
Rowan Baxter.
So during this period, he took Leanna, right? He sped off with her. He ended up keeping Leanna for 3 days at a friend's house. The friend then messaged Hannah and said this was all her fault and she shouldn't have kept the kids from Rowan. And I'm not sure if that was sent by Rowan or the friend, but either way, it's fucked up. On December 29th, Rowan was served with the DVO. I'm guessing at this point, he had returned back to the family home with Leanna. And after the court hearing on 23rd January 2020, a parenting order was set and he was allowed to see the children a few times a week, including overnight, by the way. Honestly, he's lucky that he even got this after all the stunts he pulled, putting the kids in danger and messing with them mentally and emotionally and even physically. It's like, you're lucky you even got to be with the kids a few times a week. On December 31st, while dropping off the kids to Hannah, Hannah saw explicit photos of herself in the back of his car. Photos of her in her underwear, and when she tried to grab these photos, he grabbed her wrist and twisted it, leaving a bruise. The police were called, and again, Rowan was not allowed contact with the kids, only via phone calls. Rowan was pissed. He was arguing, stating that the photos were for evidence that Hannah clearly wanted to have sex with him. What does that have to do with the kids? That same month, Hannah found a note on Rowan's phone that read, "Hannah, I have so much to say to you, but now that you are reading this, it's come too late. You have turned my life upside down so fast that it has destroyed me. Without you thinking of any implications of what you are doing or saying is just pure evil. I have done nothing but love and care for you and the children to the best of my ability. I wasn't perfect, but I certainly have not deserved what you are putting me through. I never in my entire life thought you could be capable of anything like this, and I just can't take it anymore. The stress and pressure of what you have done has broken me down, and I have no fight left. The game that you are playing is disgraceful, and I'm ending it. I hope all this was worth it for you and your family. I'm finishing your game. I don't want to play anymore. This was never my intention." During the months Hannah was separated from Rowan, she sought support from family and friends and reached out to domestic violence services, indicating her desire to break free from this freaking toxic relationship. Hannah also told a work friend a few weeks before her death that she feared he was going to kill her, but she did not believe he would ever hurt their 3 children. Okay, guys, I'm just gonna put a warning here because I didn't think this was gonna affect me, but it probably will. So we're going to talk about the day of the incident, and it's quite upsetting. So again, if it's going to trigger you, I really think you should leave the video now. So at this point, Rowan was unraveling. He had confided to friends and church pastors that his life was crumbling, that Hannah had left him for another man and had taken their children away. They all noted that he was incredibly controlling and extremely paranoid. On February 10th, Hannah told a friend at work that if she and Rowan were ever alone together, she had no doubt that he would try and kill her. She then spoke about needing a will. That week, she told her mother that she needed a will because when he kills me, he will be in jail, and who will look after the children? Little did she know that just over a week later, this would all be very true. On February 18th, Rowan left his home just before 7 a.m. carrying a green jerry can. He went to a petrol station and filled up the can with 4.6 liters of fuel. He also bought 3 Kinder Surprise chocolates and 2 bags of lollies. In the afternoon, he phones a family helpline and asks about a men's support program. That night, he called the kids on FaceTime but didn't talk. He just cried. Hannah told her mom about how bad she felt and that she was scared he was going to kill himself. Sue reminded her of his manipulative behavior and that this could all be a ploy to make Hannah bend to his will. On February 19th, 2020, Sue woke up early and headed to the gym, and she came back by about 6:20 a.m. Hannah and the kids were already awake at this point, and they greeted her good morning. Hannah then left to grab a coffee for Sue and herself, and then she sat chatting with her mom, drinking her coffee while Sue was getting ready for work. That same morning at 7 a.m., Rowan went to a cafe and ordered a takeaway coffee. As he waited, he told the barista that he was fighting with the ex-missus. He stayed there for about an hour drinking his coffee at a table outside. The barista noticed that while Rowan was sitting there, he was just staring at his phone, and he was staring at the Maps application. I'm sure you guys can understand why he was looking at this application. He was tracking someone. At 7:20 a.m., as Sue was leaving for work, she gave everyone kisses and told them she loved them. At 8:12 a.m., Rowan arrived outside the Clarke's home in his aunt's Nissan car. At 8:15 a.m., Hannah then left in her silver Kia to drop the kids to school. As Hannah started her car, Rowan unexpectedly forced his way into her car, armed with a gas can full of fuel and a knife. He told her to drive. She screamed at him to get out. At 8:25 a.m., a neighbor, Michael, he was in his driveway washing his car when Hannah pulled over in front of him and screamed, "Call the police. He's going to kill me. He's poured petrol on me." Michael could see Rowan holding Hannah around her arms and chest with both of his hands in a bear hug, and she was trying to escape. He noticed Rowan was calm and in control. He walked over to the car, but before he could say anything, the car burst into flames. Hannah leapt out of the car covered in flames. Michael told her to get on the ground as he hosed her with water. When the flames went out, he went to the other side of the car and found Rowan on the ground on fire. He also hosed him off with water as best as he could. When he returned to Hannah, she was screaming, but he couldn't make sense of what she was saying. He heard her say, "My kids, I didn't save my kids." He couldn't see any kids in the car though, and he thought that the kids were killed elsewhere earlier that day. He ran inside and told his daughter to call 000 at 8:26 a.m. Michael also suffered burns to his face from the fire. Another witness, Samantha, saw the fire and ran out of her car over to Hannah, leaving her own kids in her car. She began hosing Hannah as Hannah said she couldn't believe what Rowan had done. She said she had a DVO. She said her babies were in the car and asked whether anyone had got them out. The car started to roll back and Hannah somehow stood up screaming, "My kids, someone get my kids." At this point, a few other witnesses emerged and tried to stop the car from rolling back using pliers of wood underneath the wheels. And witnesses who tried to help a badly burned Rowan noticed he still had a knife in his hand. When anyone tried to put out the flames on the car, Rowan would get in the way and growl at them, not wanting the flames on the car to die. He didn't want his children to be saved. Two men ran to the car and saw a baby in the back seat of the burning car. All three children were strapped into their car seats. No one could even get close to the car as it was fully engulfed in flames, and Rowan was also armed with this knife. No one could save the three children. They had tragically died by this point. Hannah was screaming and crying, "My babies are in the car. Why didn't I just stay in the car with them? My kids, someone get my kids." Emergency crews arrived and managed to put out the fire, and despite being covered in severe burns, Hannah managed to speak to the paramedics and the police, informing them that Rowan had done this. She tried to stop him from setting the car on fire. She was fighting him, pushing him, and she ripped his shirt in the process. She tried to give them as much information despite being in excruciating pain. 97% of Hannah's body was covered in severe burns. The paramedics were amazed at the level of detail she was able to give with the injuries she sustained, including the names and dates of birth of her 3 kids. Hannah was always in fear of her own life, but she never thought that Rowan would hurt their kids. Poor children were so badly burned they could not be visually ID'd. They were pronounced dead at 9:53 a.m. This is just horrific, guys. Like, I'm barely making it through. I don't know how Hannah had the strength she had. This is like torture. Rowan, during this time, had walked over to the sidewalk despite being covered in 80% burns himself. He knelt down on the sidewalk holding the knife to his chest. Witnesses surrounded him and pleaded with him to drop the knife. Instead, he fell forward onto the knife and curled up into a fetal position. He took his own life and was pronounced dead at the scene. Later on, it was believed that Rowan initially wanted to abduct Hannah and the children, kill Hannah with the knife, and then burn her body with the fuel. But when she drove to the neighbor Michael to get help, he just thought, screw it all. And once he realized what he'd done, he got the knife and killed himself. A few hours later, Hannah's family and friends gathered at her bedside at the burns unit of the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. They knew she wouldn't survive, but they wanted to say goodbye. Her friend kissed her goodbye on the cheek, and as she did so, a single tear fell from Hannah's eyes. A tear of loss and grief and sadness. Hannah died later that evening. Hannah, Aaliyah, Leanna, and Trey's death left their family and the community devastated. The brutal nature of the crime shocked the nation and sparked widespread outrage and grief. Hannah and her children were buried on March 9th, 2020. Sue Lloyd and her brother Nate lost everything. Their home, which was once filled with their daughter's voice and loud grandchildren's laughter and toys, was now empty and silent. Sue and Lloyd left the kids' bedrooms the same, trying to find the strength to keep their memories alive. The family became vocal advocates for raising awareness about domestic violence. They campaigned for better support systems for victims and called for legislative changes to improve safety measures for victims. Hannah's story resonated deeply with many. Sue and Lloyd created the Small Steps for Hannah Foundation to halt domestic violence, and HALT stands for Hannah, Aaliyah, Leanna, and Trey. It's their goal to bring more awareness about family violence. Rowan Baxter died from self-inflicted wounds shortly after the attack, which meant that he never faced trial for his actions. He was a narcissist who took no responsibility for his behavior. Hannah was to blame for everything in his eyes. The fact that he couldn't face the accountability of his own actions, the fact that he never paid for what he did to his own family, compounded by the grief experienced by Hannah's family, really highlights the systemic failures in protecting victims of domestic violence. The court noted that while Hannah did receive family violence help from the police and other services, and while they were appropriate, there was a failure to recognize the risk of intimate partner homicide, which results from separation in a coercive, controlling relationship. That physical violence is not the only indicator of risk, rather the amount of control a person has over the victim. That is the most reliable indicator of homicide risk. Rest in peace to Hannah, Aaliyah, Leanna, and Trey. Hannah was a great mother and all she wanted was happiness in her life. Rowan made sure to destroy it all. I remember this case being on the news. I remember seeing the car on fire, and I was like, I couldn't hear what was happening, but I was like, hold on, wait, did I just, like, was there an accident? Like, what just happened? And then when they said that the children were in the car, and I remember seeing Hannah's body being taken away by the paramedics, and I was like, wait, did everyone get sick? Like, I was so confused because I just couldn't believe that this really happened, but I thought that it was an accident, and you know, how unfortunate, like what a horrific thing to happen. Then later on, when I found out it was her own father that caused this, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, it's always crazy to me when people murder their own children. Like, how can you do that? And when you do it to hurt your partner, like, what is wrong with you? It's just like, it's like unimaginable to me. Like, when you're doing that to your kids, don't you think about the moment they were born? Don't you think about all the happy times? It's definitely like, damn, not everyone's supposed to be a parent, you know? Like, let me know your thoughts on this case down below, guys. And I will see you in next week's video. Besitos. Bye.